we are gonna be tight with our time tonight. Want to get everybody out of here when we said we would. So we will first allow our panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll have a few prepared questions we're going to go through and let them answer. And then we want to save some time at the end for questions from our students or other participants who are here. And if over the course of the discussion, as people are talking, if you have a question that occurs to you, you can just go ahead and drop it in the chat there, and Lauren and I will be monitoring that. And then towards the end of our hour, we will open that up, and Lauren can read some of those questions out of the chat for our panelists to answer. But let's start. Robert, why don't you introduce yourself to the group here, and let us know what's your role in your current organization, and maybe just a bit about your path to get there.
Yeah, hi, my name is Robert Bradford IV. I'm an art director with a focus on social media marketing. I worked at EP+CO, a local ad agency, for about 7 years. And then recently in August, I left and kind of did a little bit of freelancing before getting a position as a contractor at Chick-fil-A right now, working at their in-house agency. Also focusing on social media, but also doing some in-restaurant stuff, some print stuff, just various things within Chick-fil-A.
Wonderful, thank you. And Katherine, how about you?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm Katherine Davis with Smoak PR here in Greenville. We've had the firm for 27 years now, and we really like to tell your story locally, regionally, and nationally through a variety of different channels. Still using traditional media, but a big focus on digital media as well.
Wonderful. Ben, how about you?
Yes, my name is Ben Granger. I have worked now 4 different agencies. Most recently, I am at EP+CO. Robert and I used to actually be co-workers, but I've worked at Fairby Lane, which is based in Greenville, as well as the Cargo Agency, and then also an agency named Mythic in Charlotte. I actually currently still live in Charlotte. And all of my time in this wonderful world of marketing and advertising has been involved on the account management, brand strategy side of things.
Great. Sarah?
Hi, my name is Sarah Cooke, and I am currently the marketing coordinator at the Salvation Army Ray and Joan Core Community Center, which is here in downtown Greenville. And I've been there for about 2 months. And previous to that, I got my master's in Scotland at the University of Edinburgh in business. And then I also have worked for myself for the last 5 years.
Thank you. And Russell. Oh, Russell, you're on mute still.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me as well. So my name is Russell Watts. I am the Vice President at Strategic Marketing International. Previous to this, I worked at an ad agency in Manhattan, and I'm here now.
Great. All right. So welcome again to everyone. All right. So first question, and this one will be for everyone, and we'll start with you, Ben, but we'll call around to everyone. But just tell us a little bit about your career path, and specifically, how did you decide to pursue the career that you have, and how did you manage to land your very first job in the field?
Awesome. Yes, I graduated Furman in 2012 with a business administration degree. I think everybody, both on this call and both panelists and students, know that coming from a liberal arts school, it's a very more broad degree. And so I've always known that I wanted to own my own business. And I had a mentor that had zero connection to Furman, but really spoke to me and said, well, you have interest in marketing and advertising, so why don't you start at an ad agency? And quite frankly, I honestly had zero clue what an ad agency was coming out of Furman. And so landed a job by way of a Furman alum, which I definitely am a large proponent of. That is just keep your connection strong and make sure that you're always networking. And you never know, I always use like the hockey assist model. You never know who you're going to talk to. They might know someone else that could connect you to what you really want to do. So started working, and the mentor also gave me the perspective to say, hey, start at a small shop, a smaller agency, smaller company. You're going to get exposed to so much more stuff. Get the kind of, I guess, cliche term is wear multiple hats. And that's very true as I've grown up in my career and really always worked at small agencies. And now I'm at an agency that's about 200, 250 people. And so you have a different kind of level of experience. And it's helped me understand what I don't like more than what actually I do like. And so I start to learn more about that and kind of find that niche of where I fit within this world that is ever changing. And so that's kind of been my path. And now it's kind of like, what's next? So that's where it's at.
Great. Okay, Russ, same question to you. How did you decide to pursue this path, and how did you manage to get your very first position?
Yeah, so I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do in college. Ended up becoming an economics major, got a sales job out of school, which sucked, hated it. Ended up, the economy ended up collapsing, which ended up being the best thing ever for me. And our entire department was laid off. As a result, I had a lot of extra time, and so I went to the library and took a bunch of personality tests. And I think Furman makes you guys do this. So Myers-Briggs, Big Five, whatnot. And those personality tests just kind of confirmed that I would like to do marketing. And so then at that point, figured, all right, well, there's a lot of people looking for jobs, and they're all just applying online. And so I too just applied online, and that didn't really work. And so figured, let's just do what everyone is not doing. And also, we might as well just shoot for the stars, because if you aim high, then you miss, you're still high. And so I Googled and found a list of the top 100 ad agencies in New York City. At this time, I was living in DC. Figured New York's the place to be. Googled top 100 companies in New York, then came up with a plan where on Tuesdays, I charted them all in the city geographically in different groups. And then on Tuesday, I would send the resume to them and say, hey, I'm going to stop by on Friday and hand you a hard copy. And then I did that. And a lot of them said, oh, you can't get in the door or whatnot. But then a lot of them also let me in, and a lot of them started talking to me. Ended up talking with one guy who ended up referring me to that another guy. Ended up talking with him for a couple hours. And then sure enough, he was like, we don't have a job for you right now, but love your ambition. And so about a month later, he called me and said, hey, we're making a role for you. Come on up. It was the lowest possible low grunt role at the ad agency. I think I was starting off by sending out calendar invites for a project. But foot was in the door, and then worked hard, worked way up. And then, ended up becoming senior director at that agency. And at that point, I was working for my clients were EMC, Juniper, Dell. I was doing work with Google, AT&T, Verizon, flying back and forth to California, taking the red eye, doing conferences. It was super exciting, tons of fun, moving the needle, but not a great way to raise a family. So I actually met my wife at work, and when we wanted to raise a family, we decided to go somewhere else. And so we literally made a Google Sheets list of where in the world we wanted to live, picked Charleston, South Carolina. And then at that point, looked down in Charleston, South Carolina, started talking to people down here, and that's how I ended up at strategic marketing.
Thank you, Robert. How about you? Same question.
Yeah, so I didn't really set out to go into marketing. I just kind of fell into it. I really loved art and design growing up. And after I graduated, I was looking into places where I could kind of flex those skills. And I found EP & Company. And I just applied. My book at the time was very illustration heavy, because that's just what I love to do on my free time. So I kind of bolstered my design work with illustration. And when I got to EP, I really tried to lean into that, try to help out with the artwork to kind of distinguish myself from the other designers. Come to find out I was not quick enough to help out with the EP illustrator to help him draw. So I went back to being more of just graphic design. But I think it's interesting, I guess, with my story is that I love to learn. I love to expand my skill sets, what I can do, what I know. So I started out in the design team, just the production team, kind of cranking out multiple designs through maybe an art director that had already designed that sheet or that ad. But over time, I was able to work and kind of show off my skills and be invited over to the creative side. I was able to more to flex my muscles and my learning skills. So that's kind of where I flourished. And I really love to dive deep, do a little research into both the subject matter of my design as well as the design concept itself, and then really kind of blow that out with a storyboard, mood boards, and really kind of get that going. So that's where I like to live.
Awesome, thank you. Katherine.
Right, thanks, Andy. You know, my love for this marketing world, I think, started really when I was in high school with some events and some, grassroots PR that we really had to do back then because we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have the internet, and we really didn't have computers. And so I'm somewhat dating myself, but it was through, events in college. It was through a lot of internships at ad agencies that I realized maybe the ad side of things wasn't for me. As much as I loved it, I am much more comfortable in the PR world. And so it's that interaction with people, it's the writing that I really enjoy and have enjoyed for so many years. And so I did, maybe, I guess, Ben, what you were saying, I did internships at small agencies, at big agencies. I did an internship with a governmental agency. And through that is really where I learned what I liked and what I didn't like and where my strengths were. And so my first job out of college was a job that I knew was only going to be for 6 months. And it was for a children's hospital, and they had a tour of homes. So I got to do everything under the sun from, plan an event, write the press releases, rally the troops, get the volunteers, sell sponsorships. And from there, my little business took off. And it was very scary, but at the time I didn't have a husband or children or a family. And so I could work morning, noon, and night to really launch the business.
All right, thank you. And Sarah.
So I was a music major and humanities minor at Furman, and coming in freshman year, I knew that I wanted to study abroad. And my background is Edinburgh, Scotland, where I ended up studying abroad, and that essentially started my marketing career without any sort of, look to the future for that. But I started a blog called Strikes of Luck, and that was right before I went abroad in 2016. And so I started the blog, I started the Instagram and everything, and I knew I loved photography, I loved writing, and this would be a great way to be able to share all of those with all of my friends and family back home. And never really imagined that it would turn into anything more. And then came back to Greenville that summer and started freelancing and writing for local publications and everything, just based on those experiences and blog posts and photos and everything that I had done when I was abroad. And so continued freelancing throughout senior year. And I ended up working with Artisphere. So I blogged for Artisphere for one semester. And then I also interned with Artisphere the next year, and have always worked with small businesses and nonprofits, and always loved working for myself as well. And so this is actually, being at Kroc is a totally different experience for me, working for a larger nonprofit and, sort of having my hands in a lot of different things, which I love. And I've only been there 2 months, so it is still very new and I'm learning a lot and I love it.
Wonderful. All right. For our next question, we'll start with you, Russ. What types of experiences and skills should our students be developing during their time at Furman to be competitive for opportunities after they graduate?
Yeah. So in my opinion, just what Sarah did is freaking awesome. so Google actually did a study on the most productive people and the best workers they had when they looked back at who really rose up the ranks. And it was people that could passionately pursue their interests. And then if they were wrong, be able to admit they were wrong, pivot, and passionately pursue what they believe is correct then. And so I would strongly encourage you to just start doing that now. So just start, whatever you're interested in, start a blog on it and just go after it. If you're, one of the best people that's worked for me was someone that they were good at painting and they made a cooler for a mountain weekend. Someone else said, hey, can I pay you $100 to make me a cooler? And then they took that and started an Etsy shop and just like took it to the next level, just went after it and, started an e-commerce store. And so I just love just whatever it may be, just do it. Like, and I mean, I would follow it up by saying, ultimately you're defined by what you do. I think up until this point in college, there's a lot of potential that defines you, but really it's ultimately going to be what you actually do. So just start doing stuff and see what you like. So that would be my big picture recommendation. And then if you want something very specific, take courses in graphic design and psychology. Done.
Great. All right, Katherine, how about you? What should they be doing right now?
Absolutely. Well, I think ditto to what Russ said, just be involved, be active so you can really build that resume. For the girls who babysat in high school or continue to babysit in college, that's great. But if I see a resume that has, babysitter or even nanny, it's out the door. I want some real life experience on the resumes that I'm looking at. Whether it is, an assistant in the English department, if you've got, if you're an English major, the more writing opportunities and skills you have, the better. I love English majors as PR professionals because we have to write so much. So, work on the school newspaper, be a part of anything you can on campus that lets you write that you can put on your resume. I think, we've talked about internships and how we determined our career paths. Intern at big places, intern at small shops, intern at a TV station, intern at a big agency, intern at a nonprofit. I mean, don't waste your 4 years and not build a great resume with those internships. I think that's critically important. 2 of the young ladies that work for me now started out as interns. And, you can train them, you can see what their skills are. And it's a very good transition for us anyway. I think it's always very wise to get someone else to look at your resume. I look at young folks' resumes all the time, and it's just a little tweaking that can set you apart. And I think that's critically important. I'm not going to talk anymore. I can talk on and on and on about what you need to do to prepare yourselves. Don't hesitate to reach out to me, but intern and build that resume.
All right, Ben, coming to you next.
Awesome. I think one kind of underlying thread that both Katherine and Russ are hitting on is, and that I think Furman does a great job of cultivating, is just having a natural curiosity to life. The world of marketing and advertising, honestly, outside of just marketing and advertising, it changes constantly. You have to live and you have to learn. But I think if you come at it with an open mind and come at it with this natural curiosity to learn and challenge yourself and realize like, oh, wow, that might not be the answer, but I can find it this way. And having a yes versus no mentality, all that kind of stuff are things that even in hiring people or coworkers and people that I look for that I want to work alongside, like those are the type of people I want to work with and work for and have work for me. And so that is something that I think Furman does a great job of, and even liberal arts schools in general do a great job of cultivating. But I think if you can know that and have that awareness about yourself as you're going to pitch yourself to having a one-on-one conversation or just networking and finding those people that you want to talk to, if you can use that to your advantage, because you have a unique advantage coming from Furman, the better off you're going to be.
Thank you. Sarah, what should they be doing right now?
Yeah, I was going to say Ben's points actually super well segue into mine, because I was going to talk about transferable skills. And that for me has been, I think, the most valuable lesson that I've learned, especially coming from Furman and then also going into a graduate degree in business, which I had previously not taken any classes in, had not had that sort of formalized experience in. And everyone at the beginning of school was like, oh, so, where'd you go to school? What'd you do? And they were always so surprised when I said music, because obviously so many people were from business backgrounds or communications and different things like that. And I think the opportunity and ability to talk about yourself and your accomplishments and the things that you've done and everything are so important. And that's something also that Furman cultivated in me. And I had those experiences because I did so many different things at Furman. And I love that you were able to have those experiences, but also learn how to speak about them and how to pitch yourself, how to have these connections and make those networking opportunities and everything based on the things that you've done, but then the direction that you could see yourself going in.
Great. And Robert.
Yeah.
You get the last word on this one.
Great. Speaking in terms of someone who's an art director or graphic designer, I had like 3 main points that I think are really important for anyone going to that field. One is learning the software. Learn as much as the Adobe Creative Suite as you can, from Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, After Effects, Premiere. I've had to do so much motion design, so much editing that I did not expect or consider I would have to doing when I was learning this stuff. So just really dive into that and don't be afraid to take on new software. Skills, I would say continue to develop skills that make you unique, even if you think they're totally unrelated, or even an interest that you have that seems just left field. I know a friend who still works at EP that loves horror makeup, like zombie makeup. And that comes in handy sometimes. And they loop him into projects just because he has that skill set, or someone that can bake or can draw or do typography. Just if you have any type of skill that makes you special, keep cultivating it. And I would also say that if you're around people that have a skill that you don't have, that you think is cool, ask them and learn from them too. I owe so much of what I know now to all the people that were around me, and I kind of grew from them. So just keep those people around and keep learning from them. And I would say projects. So internships are very important. I know before I got to EP, I interned at the Greenville County Museum of Art for a while, doing programs for their summer programs for kids. But I would also say if you can't find an internship, or just even to bolster that, just make up your own projects. Don't wait for somebody to give you a cool creative project. If you have a cool idea, just do it. Just design apparel, design a book, rebrand a business just for fun. Your portfolio can be mostly spec work like that. As long as it really shows your creative thinking and your design skills, you'll still go a long way.
That's awesome. Okay, moving on. Sarah, I have a question just for you as our youngest panelist here. One of our more recent graduates anyways. Talk a little bit about the job search process and what that was like for you, and what advice you would offer to students who would be entering the job market next year.
Yeah, of course. I've been through a few different iterations of the job search, from when I exited Furman in 2017 and before I went to grad school and after, and up until this year when I was looking before and during the pandemic. So I think there are obviously a lot of differences to consider at this point. Obviously, so many digital opportunities, Zoom interviews, things like that. And so I think that those transferable skills that I was talking about earlier, those are even more important now because you might not have those actual in-person connections. So making sure that, whatever sorts of materials and things that you send that are, top of the line, that you get other people to look at them, that you're very confident in the things that you are sending. And then for, say Zoom interviews or different things like that, practicing, like that is something so important, even picking out your outfit, looking at your backgrounds, everything like that. There are so many things that you can make yourself comfortable with before you enter into those experiences. And I think that that is very key, especially now, because you won't have that, ability necessarily to be in person and make those impressions. So everyone is sort of moving at a different pace. And I think that that is probably also something that I learned, because, there are some times where you apply for jobs and nothing happens and you don't hear back. And so you have to be proactive. You have to make sure that you're following up. You have to make sure that you are doing that work to make sure that you're advancing those opportunities. And if they don't work out, that's fine. And, I think that is also a big lesson to learn. Like, the experience that you have with that company from the start could dictate how you have that experience when you work there. And for instance, with my current job, like, I had an amazing experience from the time that I interviewed and had those, initial conversations and everything to actually working there. And so I think that's something to pay attention to that's really important, is making sure that you are tracking those sorts of things and hey, I had, a really good experience with this, and then that's the one that I want to follow up with. Or maybe this one wasn't as successful in that way. Let me find something else. And so I think taking stock of all of those things that you like to do, all of the things that you've had those previous experiences in, or even ones that you haven't necessarily explored, but like Robert was saying, learning more and taking classes or developing those skills are also really important.
Wonderful. All right, and this question really would be for anyone on the panel who has either hired Furman students as interns or perhaps as employees, and sometimes those are this. I get that one can transition to the other, but in either both of those cases, what is it specifically that you are looking for when you're reviewing those candidates, and what is it that makes someone really stand out in that process? To you, Katherine, I know you've got a few Furman folks there, so why don't you start with this one?
Absolutely. We certainly love our Furman interns. I think, number one, taking the initiative to reach out to us and set up an interview, number one, in a timely manner. We don't want an intern that is reaching out to us in May looking for a summer internship. We've already had a number of kids or young students look to us for interviews for those summer internships. Amazing. So number one, it would be taking that initiative early to ask for an interview. I think then the professionalism when we are conducting that interview, whether it's via Zoom or in person, and their eagerness to learn our profession and be a part, not just add it to their resume. And so a lot really is going to hinge on that interview. Are they coming to us with, questions, or are they just sitting there waiting for us to do all of the talking? So I think, it is really that in-person or Zoom interview that can make or break. I'm not looking at that point at their resume quite as much as I am, if they're applying for a full-time position. We're here to teach these young students through an internship. So we don't expect them to come in with a fabulous resume at that point. We want them to be able to learn at Smoak PR.
Awesome. Russ, you want to take this one? I know you've had a few successful interns recently.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I would 100% agree with everything that Katherine just said. That is absolutely a great answer. And, it's in line with a lot of things I would say too, is that you kind of think about it like there's a resume and then there's off resume elements. And so, yeah, you want, for making your resume look as good as possible, obviously GPA comes into effect, and the pursuing the passions as we talked about. But then all those off resume elements are really opportunities for you to stand out way above everyone else. And so that could be, as Katherine mentioned, applying early, or a lot of what I really like is if someone just applies online and then also sends an email out saying, hey, I applied online, but also just wanted to shoot you an email, and then calls the office. And I mean, it would be amazing. I've had people show up to the office before and say, hey, I applied, just wanted to also resume. Like it's tough to tell if someone's really a doer. But like we want doers. We want people that get the job done and actually like make stuff happen. And you can show that. And it's much better to show that than just say that you do that. I mean, everyone says they're a hard worker. But yeah, ultimately the two things that you look for are, number one, and most important, is just being a good person. If you're not a good person, you are not going to get hired. And that just comes from the idea that work 7 or 7 days a week or 5 to 7 days a week with people in the office, and I want my life to not suck. So just want to be around good people. And then also they've done studies, and it's like great work environments tend to be where everyone's nice, and that can be in sales or engineering or whatnot. But when people are nice, it creates a better environment. Everyone's happier. You're able to get more jobs, more done. So try to look for being a good person and working hard, and work on not only the resume stuff, but also the off resume stuff.
Great. Robert or Ben, anything to add there?
I can add a couple of things. I won't piggyback on anything that Russell and Katherine said. I mean, it's all spot on. I think I'd say too, maybe when you, regardless of if you're starting out an internship or a full-time position, I think having the ability to swallow a little pride and understand that no one is expecting you to have all the right answers. And so knowing that openly, and I think this also comes with good management probably, but understanding that you need to feel comfortable to ask questions. And so I think everything that we're talking about here too is it's a two-way street, the hiring process. You've got to make sure that it's a right fit for you as well. And so you feeling comfortable that it's the right place for you, the right place that you feel open, you feel like you can be yourself and grow and things like that is also super key. So I wouldn't lose sight of that as well.
Great. Robert, anything?
I would love to chime in and just totally double stress that point. Do what you want to do. I have friends that wanted to make a lot of money, so they went to Wall Street and now they're miserable. Like truly, I mean, I try to listen to old people because they're wise, they have a lot of experience, and the two things old people say a lot are do what you love, and when you're a parent, enjoy it because it goes by fast. So really do what you love. Great point, Ben.
Well, I was going to add that the interns that really flourished EP when I was there were the ones that really expressed themselves and let them know what they were excited about. I know there's an intern that loved Bojangles, and we happen to have Bojangles as a client. So of course he was like looped in and super excited to develop ideas for that. So just let yourself be seen and kind of really get your personality out there.
All right. Yeah, so much great advice. I really appreciate all this. We've had a lot of questions come in from students, and in the interest of being respectful of our time, I want to maybe try to transition now and get to as many of their questions as we can in the time we have left. So Lauren, you want to share a few of those questions for us?
Sure, Andy, I'd be happy to. It seems like we have a lot of questions coming in about the effects of the pandemic and how it's impacted these industries. So I'm just curious, and maybe Katherine, you might be a good person to answer this question, is how has the pandemic impacted your business, and how has it impacted the public relations industry?
Sure, absolutely. Well, we do a great deal of events. And so obviously that part of our business has been impacted the greatest. And we have had one in-person event since March. And it was just a couple of weeks ago, a client did a company event at a farm. And it was 15 acres, and everyone, was socially distanced, but there was a band, and it was great. Anyway, so needless to say, events are not happening, and that was a great portion of our business. Folks 100% need PR. They need digital marketing like never before, as everyone on this panel and probably everyone that's a part of this tonight knows, I mean, social media is just through the roof right now. So for Smoak PR, that was already part of our pivot. We had hired before COVID a digital media coordinator. Us, that is where we really have turned our focus to do a great deal of digital media. Probably very different though than EP. And even Russell, I'm not that familiar with your company, but probably different. And really everybody needs PR right now. You know, they need PR more than ever. So we've been very lucky that even though the events are non-existent for the most part, PR and our digital media is keeping us very busy. We have not had to lay anyone off. We did not have to furlough anyone early on. And so we have been very fortunate to weather the storm, but it is certainly not over. And as a small business owner, you know, I'm always looking at the numbers, looking at the books to make sure that, you know what, we know what our business looks like for 6 months, 18 months out.
Thanks, Katherine. It sounds like you all have pivoted and are continuing to be successful. So that's great to hear. Russ, let me turn to you for just a minute. You mentioned that you graduated during a recession or a downtime in the economy, and that, you know, it was challenging to find a job. And I think a lot of our students at Furman are concerned right now about the job market, maybe specifically in the marketing, PR, advertising field. So one student specifically wanted to know, how stressful was it to find a job, and what did you really do to find a job during the down economy?
Yeah, great question. A few elements in there. So first things first, this is an opportunity. Throw out the door right now that this is a bad thing, because it is what it is. It's different, but it's absolutely an opportunity. So it's a task opportunity when you see it. And it may not be perfect, but just go after it. And as far as for, you know, there's a lot of, I mean, right now we're seeing a boom. I mean, our clients are rushing us for many things that they have not asked for before. And honestly, like, we've kind of painted ourselves as strategic consultants in a way. So like, we're helping entire companies that are international chemical manufacturers, not just pivot their entire business models. And so yes, it sucks. It really sucks for a lot of people. But in our specific niche for marketing, there's a lot going on. And honestly, I think if you're considering a career in marketing, for the long term, I think it's great. In fact, Daniel Pink wrote a book essentially charting, you know, humans and whatnot. And okay, so I'll make it real quick, but there was an agricultural age, machines were invented, and became the industrial age. Machines get outsourced, with computers invented, and now it's the information age. Next things up, once, you know, computers really start doing a lot more, they'll be able to do a lot of things, but it's going to take a while before they can be empathetic and be creative. And so the jobs where you're empathizing and being creative, that's for our lifetime probably going to be a great career. So if that happens to be what you're interested in, then go after it. And as far as for how to apply, I think was the last part of that question. Do what other people are not doing. Zig when others zag. I was joking around with the panelists before y'all entered. I'm literally at Disney World right now at the Ariel Resort, and we had no lines. It is a pandemic. There was supposed to be a hurricane, and we're here on a Tuesday, and we just walked straight through to the front for everything. So zig while others zag. Everyone else is applying online, going to monster.com. So sure, do that. But if you're going to do that, then make sure to also try to find someone, send a resume, call, show up. I mean, if you really love a job, if you really want to get in with a place, you know, maybe come up with a cool little package. Those are all things that I might do, but whatever you are good at or whatever you feel like, just do it. Like, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid how you might be perceived. If you're trying to get the job, be yourself, kind of to Ben's point, be yourself and do you. And if it's quirky and it's weird, it might catch someone else's eye that's also quirky and weird, wants to work together with someone quirky and weird. So like, just be you and do that to apply.
great advice. Thanks, Russ. And I'll add in there too, I know it is a little bit more challenging right now with the job market the way it is, but we still have lots of students that are finding jobs. So I just encourage those of you that are seniors on the call, just start early and come in and meet with a career advisor, and we're happy to help you come up with a plan to help you kind of move forward. So my next question, I think it was Katherine that mentioned how important internships are and gaining experience in the field to be competitive for these types of opportunities. Unfortunately, I think a few of our students, may not have had the opportunity to intern over the past summer due to the COVID pandemic. So I'm curious if anyone has any thoughts on, how a senior may be able to gain some experience this year before graduating. Or other things that they could do to make themselves marketable in this job market if they have not had the opportunity to intern. I don't know if anyone wants to touch on that. Russ, you want to go ahead and touch on that?
I'll touch on that and reiterate what Robert said earlier about, if you want to work at an apparel company, even if you don't have the experience, just like start creating it. If somebody showed up and said, yeah, I didn't have an internship, but here's all these things that I did because I'm that passionate about doing this and working in this industry, to me, that would even be better. So just do it. Like if you're interested in doing it, just do it. You can cut out TV and just start doing what you're passionate in.
Thanks, Russ. Other suggestions on how our seniors might be able to gain some experiences during their last year to make them a little bit more marketable?
Well, I know that having a post-grad internship is not ideal, and everyone, has the mindset that they need to have a job before they graduate from college. But, we've had a number of post-grad interns that felt like they just did not have the experience that they needed and came in, for a semester. And, it's just one more way to continue building that resume. But I think what Russ and everyone keeps saying is be creative. You're in a creative field. So call a nonprofit. If you're a dog lover, call the Humane Society. All nonprofits always need marketing, PR, advertising help. And just say, hey, I'm willing to work for free if you would let me promote XYZ. So I think you've got to take some initiative. At the end of the day, put yourself out there.
That's really great advice, Katherine. I think there are still opportunities to do internships this year, or there's lots of volunteer opportunities out there. So I encourage students just to work on gaining some experience in an area that they're passionate about. All right, well, let's transition a little bit away from the pandemic. Robert, I wanted to kind of touch base with you. I know that you've spent the past, 7-8 years working with EP and Company and have recently transitioned into more doing freelance and contract work. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like and how one gets started in that area and how one finds clients when you're doing freelance work?
Yeah, mostly all my freelance work has really been word of mouth. Just doing something for someone, they tell someone else. That's really all I've ever done. And I know a lot of people that has been their whole business model. They don't really advertise themselves. They just let the work speak for themselves, but I think it's really nice. And in terms of the difference between the ad agency life and the in-house agency life, it's really very interesting. Going from EP+CO, where you have to work on a lot of clients, have your hands on a lot of different pots, and also know a lot of different guidelines as well per each client. It's very interesting going to Chick-fil-A, which is one client, knowing that one brand inside and out so well. So your mind can be a little more focused. And also that doesn't really stifle the creativity either. I'm still working on a lot of various projects, like I said, social media, but also in restaurant experiential stuff. But it's just that I could wrap my head around one brand and have a very deep dive rather than almost like an octopus experience where my mind is kind of spread out in different different areas.
Thanks, Robert. And just a quick follow-up. Do you find that like a recent graduate would be in a position to seek out freelance type work? Or do you feel like you've been able to be successful as a freelance professional based on your other experience?
Oh no, I did freelance starting out of college, like immediately after I graduated. It's just what services I offered have changed over time. So like I said, when I graduated, I was mostly doing illustration. So that's what I focused my freelance on. I would do portraits of people, or I would do logo designs, because that's what I knew at the time. But over time, I developed more skills. I developed social media experience. So just this past summer, I did some, a friend made a short film. So I did some social media posts to advertise that film. I was able to do some animations for them. So it's just what I offer has changed, but I think you can go into freelancing right out of the gate to get some of that experience for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to speak to that as well, because that's actually what I did when I was graduating and did as I was still a senior at Furman. And I think I would say the same as Robert also, like as the years have gone by, I've definitely changed the kinds of things that I've done, but it's also been partly because of the kinds of clients that I've worked with, or the different experiences that I've had, as the business has evolved. But I think that's one of the other great things about being in school and having, the opportunity to obviously learn in school and do all of those things, but then have those, passion projects, like the blog for me. And so even if it wasn't something that you thought you could turn into a freelancing opportunity, like there definitely is an opportunity for it. And I think even more now with all of the digital offerings and everything, there are so many different kinds of things that you could do, that you probably have those experiences and skills for already and could easily transition into doing that after graduating.
Thanks, Sarah. That's helpful. All right, I had a question come in about graduate school, and how important is graduate school for students that are thinking about pursuing a career in marketing, advertising, and PR. Sarah, since you're here, I'll go ahead and go over to you and just see. I know that you did get your graduate school training. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you feel like that's prepared you?
Yeah, of course. And I spoke a little bit about earlier how I obviously did a very different grad school experience than I did in undergrad. And I think that to me was also very beneficial because there were so many, opportunities that I could learn from that other people had maybe already had those backgrounds in, but I didn't. And so I was coming from that outside perspective, which I think was very helpful for me, but also helpful for my classmates. We did a lot of consulting projects in my business degree, and the degree specifically was in entrepreneurship and innovation. And so we worked with small businesses in Scotland to essentially do packages for them about the different kinds of ways that their business could develop as they were working through all of that. And so they were all in different places also. So for instance, I worked with a donut startup that was about a year old. And so we essentially created an entire marketing package for them. I mocked up a website. I did photography to, show how their social media would work and everything. And so I think that all of those experiences were almost more like internships, but also in grad school. And then I was able to have those other more, lecture-based classes and everything. But I also continued to freelance when I was in grad school too. And so I think that sort of holistic experience of it for me was the most important. And so I think for choosing a grad school experience, it's kind of a combination of that, whether it's a place-based thing, like you want to be in a place that has those extra opportunities that you can do outside of school in addition to in school, or if there is a specific, skill or design element or something like that that you would like to develop. I think everyone has their different reasons for going to grad school. And I think that that's kind of up to you.
Thanks, Sarah. I might ask Katherine the same question. I know, Katherine, you've done some hiring with your role at Smoak Public Relations. How important is a master's degree to you when you're looking to hire new employees?
Sure. It is not critically important at all. I'm looking for someone who has an undergrad degree in, marketing, English, advertising, PR, but really having that graduate degree is not critically important. Now, what is critically important is being that self-starter. And if there is a skill or a class that you want to take, or it will be beneficial for our company, I'm 100% for it. We'll support it. We'll pay for it, that kind of thing. But as far as walking in and saying I have a grad degree, that is not going to make or break my decision in hiring you. But I want someone who loves to read, who's always coming to the table with new ideas, things that they've researched. It's that out of the box thinker and someone who's always learning something, because our industry is constantly changing.
Thank you, Katherine. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I have a question specifically for Ben. Ben, I have a student that's asking a little bit about what the culture is like at EP+CO. So if you want to talk a little bit about like the work-life culture at EP+CO, and also if you wouldn't mind sharing what types of internship opportunities and entry-level jobs might be a good fit for a Furman student.
Definitely. So I think anything work culture wise right now is a little bit probably not jaded is maybe not the right word, but just it's unique. I think from the onboarding process to even collaborating with your team throughout the day, it's all new. We're all figuring it out. But I think EP's culture is strong. I mean, it's a lot of culture is, I guess, ever since I've been in the working world, culture's kind of been a buzzword. I think a lot of people like to use that as like, oh, what's the culture like? Well, I think you're a part of that culture. Your culture is kind of your direct community within your working world. If you're working at a firm that's 10 people, it's obviously going to probably be the majority of everyone there. If it's a place like EP, well, we've got an office in New York and an office in Greenville. And so those have different unique cultures amongst themselves. So I think there's a lot of things that we're learning about this remote work life and what it's teaching us and how we're improving. I think there's a lot of things that we're realizing that aren't even like necessary. The stuff that we used to do in the past that now we're evolving into being even more efficient. So I think it also depends on, in terms of like how you're going to come to EP maybe and what avenue you might pursue. I think it depends on what your interests are. If you are someone who, kind of like Robert mentioned, like a lot of interns at EP can kind of navigate and find their own way based on understanding different interests that they have once they come into the walls. Like you might have a natural interest in logo design, and it's kind of all your history has been. You're an art or a designer, graphic designer by trade, and but you might shift and have a completely different love for something in maybe a more print production world, and you're working on print advertising as opposed to more branding and logo design. So I think understanding that and having the open-mindedness that I was speaking about earlier of just, I might have these natural interests. I don't have all the right answers, but this is what I'd like to learn is probably the start. But in terms of EP and starting out at an agency like that, there are essentially 3 different departments. You've got account, strategy, and creative. And so if you are someone who is coming from Furman and have been involved in graphic design or any of the arts, creative is probably going to be your more natural fit. And so finding an entry-level position there or working your way for an internship there. If you are on the business side of things or communication side of things in terms of your major, you're probably more apt to fall into the account management side. And strategy is where a lot of people sometimes start out in strategy and cross over into account or start an account and fall over into strategy. I think Russell even mentioned this earlier, but like that's what the beauty of Furman is. I took a psychology class when I was, I think, a freshman or sophomore. And so stuff like that you would never necessarily on the surface think that it relates to your day-to-day work. It actually does. I mean, even from my role of being client facing and having conversations with clients all the time, like there's a psychology to that. as there is to just natural communications and marketing in general. So I think understanding what your value is and what you're bringing to the table and where that synergy is with your interest, and then kind of getting your foot in the door, that's how you start to find your way.
Thanks, Ben. That's really helpful. So I know that we are coming to the end of our panel here. We only have a few minutes left. I know we didn't get to all of the questions, but we will follow up with some contact information for our panelists. But I wanted to wrap things up by having each of our panelists share maybe one last piece of advice that they wish that someone had given to them when they were in college. So, so Sarah, since you were our most recent college graduate, I'll start with you.
Sure. I know I've talked a lot about transferable skills today, and I think that really was my biggest takeaway from Furman, especially because being a music major, you spend so much time in that specific department that I had so many opportunities then to obviously develop those skills, but so many of them are applicable to what I'm doing now and the discipline and the motivation and everything that I learned over that time. But also all of those, different involvement opportunities and extracurriculars and everything are essentially how I then, bolstered my resume, how I had those, post-grad opportunities as well. And so I think just taking stock of all of those different things that you have done and, figuring out how then those could work in the real world.
Thanks, Sarah. I'll jump to you, Robert.
Yeah, I don't want this to sound cheesy, but I would say just be unique, don't try to mirror someone else's style or become someone else. Just really accumulate those things that make you different and just lean into that, because that'll make you stand out among the rest.
Great advice. Thanks, Robert. How about Russell?
Yeah, so in regards to finding a job, I would just tell you right off the bat, shoot for the stars. If you would work for the NFL, apply for the NFL. And especially right now during the pandemic, again, it's an opportunity. You don't know what kind of changes these companies are going through, so might as well just go for it and see what happens. Worst case scenario, you end up exactly where you're at. And then as far as for last comment on life, there's nothing more abundant than talent that is unsuccessful. There's nothing more common than genius that is unrewarded. Hard work alone is omnipotent.
Awesome. Thanks, Russ. How about Ben? Any other advice you wish that someone had given to you as a college student?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned this earlier, but you don't have to have all the right answers. I mean, I think dabble in a lot of stuff and just understand that this is kind of cliche, but it's okay to fail. That you can learn so much from that. And failure it seems like a big word and heavy, but it's not necessarily like that. I mean, you could just kind of get a paper cut and then, you figure it out. So it literally is just dabbling in a lot of different things, being open-minded and just receptive to everything around you and aware of all that. So that as you learn, you're like, okay, this is kind of more of what I'm interested in rather than this. And you'll find it and you'll, don't stress yourself out worrying about that.
Thanks, Ben. And Katherine, I'm going to let you leave us with our final advice.
Sure, absolutely. Just love what you do. Life is too short not to absolutely love what you do, because we all spend many, many hours at our job, whether it's, from home these days or back in our offices. And don't take the first job that you are offered. Really think about it and make sure it's a great fit, because you don't want to be miserable. Life's too short.
That's really great advice. Thank you all so much. We're so grateful for all of our panelists for spending the evening with us, and also
this has been great.
Yep, yeah. All of our students as well. We really appreciate you all taking one more hour to be on Zoom today. So we really appreciate it. We'll be following up with an email with some follow-up contact information. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself in the Career Center or Andy in the internship office. So thanks to everyone, and I hope you have a great night.